Hello.
So who's missing? Your facilitator, Dr. Harry. Alila, say your thing.
Actually, they are giving me the pressure.
Now you have to perform.
He's on his way.
This is a first year. So I started on April 2019. Yeah. But we have the yes.
My name is Pablo. I will just be giving time and just making sure everything goes okay. So we have about a minute, and then I'll just note how you when the time is done. Yes, we've got 60 minutes.
Japan doesn't have a regulation yet. So yeah, but JAL needs to follow the European standard. Yeah, that's why we are considering how to procure the.
Good afternoon. I think we're ready to start. Allow me to first introduce myself. My name is Harry Malila. I'm the Director General in the Western Cape Government. So allow me to welcome you to the session today. I would like to introduce my panel. And the panel here today is Toshiro Macho. Welcome. Then Caroline Capone, if that's the correct pronunciation. And then Monica Swanson, you're most welcome. And then Dr. Helga Sachs, you're also most welcome here. Now today we're going to talk about, I think, a very topical subject, particularly in this environment. And it's really the potential around PtX, as we all know it, but particularly within the aviation industry as well as within the shipping environment. And we've got specialists here, you know, from different companies, different institutions that's been operating in the space, and that will be able to share, you know, some of your knowledge, experience, and particularly, you know, how we can use this within the South African context and more broadly, within the world context, particularly to deal, with the challenges in this particular space. We've got about an hour or so to deal with some of the issues, and I mean, this is a very important subject. I mean, it touches on what the President said this morning, and also I think what was said by Premier Winde and some of the other speakers, particularly in this space. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware of the subject matter, and I mean, PtX or power to X refers to methods that transform renewable energy or power to material or energy carriers, and particularly within the shipping environment, as well as within the environment of aviation. So some comments from our side. Obviously, I mean, this is the first of a conference, the first of its kind, particularly in South Africa. We are trying to lead in the space, obviously learning from, some of the successes in Namibia, some of the successes particularly within the Northern Cape. And from a Western Cape perspective, obviously we're trying to build it as part of the work that we are doing more broadly in the country. Obviously, if one look at some of the potentials for aviation, and my colleagues will come in just now, it is around, how do we deal with the issue around CO2 emissions, particularly within the space. What are some of the opportunities and what are some of the learnings? Because at the end of the day, I think Premier Winde also, and the President refers to it, that we're all in this to create a much better future, for our children and those that actually comes after us. So today, we will talk about it, and we want to know more or less, what are some of the experiences and what is it that we can do, particularly within that space. So without going into lots of details, I'm going to ask my panel members here, maybe just to provide us with some opening remarks, maybe just saying who you are, who you work for, what is the areas of specialization, and then I've got 2 or 3 questions to each of you in terms of your particular experience. What is it that this can mean for where we want to go, particularly as a country, as a continent, and how do we deal with it? I'm going to start with Toshiro, and maybe ask you maybe just to give us a little bit of brief background about who you are, and would you like to make some opening comments given the context that I've just provided?
Okay, thank you for introduction, Dr. Harry. My name is Toshihiro Matsuo, come from, working for the Itochu Corporation. It's a Japanese, let's say conglomerate. And, okay, so it's easy for me to imagine, why, you wonder why, this small Japanese, guy is in this, panelist. I'm very, glad to hear, and it's, undeserved, honor for me to hear. But let me explain, why I'm here. So some of you might know, we had the MOU with SASO, and this could be the one with the biggest reason why I'm here. I'm invited as a panelist. Mm-hmm. But more than that, I think we have another big reason, and it's better to explain why I'm here, and it would give you a flavor, what Itochu is doing and who is Itochu. So as I said, Itochu is one of the biggest conglomerate from Japan, and we have a diversified company, and we have variety of business sector. Starting from like textile and food and machinery and metal and mineral in all over the business sector. And that's why, and also, the network and the business field is not only in Japan or Asia. We do business in all over the world, very internationally. And then we have, of course, business for the ship and marine business. And we collaborate with Japanese and South Korean shipbuilders, and then we provide and supply ship, any kind of ship to all over the world. That's why we know the demand from the market. So there is a sure and certain concrete demand for the green fuel. But when we think about business, new business, we always think more globally and let's say vertically through the value chain. So for example, here South Africa, we are importing a lot of, let's say, food ingredients like coffee and cacao or sesame and also pineapple, mainly to Asian market and also US and the European market. And then the customer has strong demand to make it more greener, because the consumer requests are more, how can I say, green and fair and clean logistic to reduce the CO2 emission. So we are developing the ammonia engine. It's not emission. It has no emission of CO2. And then this we have to utilize this vessel for the logistic of these food ingredients from South Africa. And then, but in order to operate this vessel, we need ammonia fuel. That's why we are interested in developing and investing into the ammonia production facility, of course. And then, in order to operate further, we need, for example, bunkering facility. And this is not only for Japan or Asia. We need more bunkering facility and point in all over the world. Maybe, not maybe, so sorry. So South Africa is one of the key parts for the ammonia bunkering. So this is just one example, but with this kind of view, as I told you, we are working with SASO and with South Africa, and then I'm honorably invited here. Yeah, thank you very much.
Wonderful. No, thank you very much for those comments, Toshihiro. I mean, I want to also make the point that you're talking about the small Japanese man, but I mean, dynamite comes in small packages. So yeah, it's quite effective, and I mean, it's obviously where we're working towards. I'm now going to go to Monica. And maybe just ask her for some opening comments. She's the business manager for international hydrogen projects in the port of Rotterdam, obviously within the shipping environment. I mean, I had an opportunity earlier this year to visit one of the major ports, port of Antwerp, earlier this year, in fact about 2 months ago, and it's amazing what's happening in that space. So share with us a little bit of what's happening within the port of Rotterdam, and make some opening comments with regards to what is it that we can particularly do within the shipping environment.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I have to really invite you to come and see Rotterdam. All of you are warmly welcome. We operate a fairly big port. We're known for being one of the globally operating ports. Just a quick word on myself. My name is Monica Swanson. I've been sort of setting up our import program for hydrogen in the past almost 3 years. There was another colleague, there is another colleague who has the same job. We started 3 years ago when everything was new, and it was so exciting. It was exciting, wasn't it? I still remember 2 years ago talking with your team, and they said, oh, we're an energy port, we also have to do this, and now you're doing it. We're all in this together. It's bigger than one port, it's bigger than one company, it's bigger than one country. It's all about collaboration, and hydrogen is so new, we can all learn from each other. It's really very exciting, I think. And just to clarify a little bit more about myself again, my regions in the world are the Americas, including Canada, Southern Europe, so that's Spain, Portugal, Northern Africa, so that's, for instance, Morocco, and potentially also Egypt or Mauritania, or countries that are now becoming very vocal, or were very vocal, and Moroccan was already quite into the green, as you will know. And last but not least, the Republic of South Africa. And what my job consists of, really, and started with, is trying to connect with plans for hydrogen, with projects in these regions, and seeing how we could somehow, accelerate developments by sort of trying to link into them and make the supply chain complete, or by exchanging knowledge, or sometimes even, doing research together. That was in the beginning, because nobody knew how to ship hydrogen, really new. We're still trying to learn, but it's all very new. And about Rotterdam, why are we doing this? We're a very, very big energy port. 40 to 50% of what we do is related to energy. And so just imagine, there's 3,000 companies working in our port. It's 45 kilometers of port and industrial zone integrated. So there's all the big chemical and refinery companies. There's lots of liquid bulk, and also container terminals, by the way, but energy-wise, lots of liquid bulk, oil, gas, LNG, coal. It's all coming in. About 13% of Europe gets its energy via Rotterdam. and we reach about 40% of industrial end users. For instance, Germany, 2 people from Germany in this team. North Rhine-Westphalia is one of the red-hot demand areas for energy, like the Netherlands are, and Austria and Belgium, north of France, and we're all kind of relying on import there. So what we have to do now is replace the old with the new, and in our port, we have to do that in a port that's sort of fully booked. So when I say we, I actually mean the port community, because of those about 3,000 companies, there's about 150 energy-related companies, so that's Shell, Exxon, BP, you name them, they're there. Air Products, Air Liquide, Linde, you know, the gas and oil majors, most of them operate in Rotterdam, or we have another link via traders. So there's a lot going on, and the price of oil and gas is currently determined in Rotterdam because of how that works, the system. And that system is now changing rapidly and aggressively. So we, in 2013, had someone in our company who was quite visionary and who said, ooh, we have to really make a plan for hydrogen because it's going to be essential to the mix. Otherwise, we won't have enough energy in Europe because we don't have enough renewables ourselves to produce it. So we need to look to sunny, windy, hydro-powered countries where they can produce it from electricity. And the electricity has to be green, has to be cheap, there has to be water, there has to be a space to operate in. So this is how we started 3 years ago, looking at countries where we could hopefully find good projects. And I can tell you South Africa has always been top of my list for many reasons. It has the sun, it has the wind, it also has an incredibly pleasant, warming, welcoming culture, which I really like to work with. Because in the end it's of course about people. We've been warmly welcomed in Saldanha, I still remember, and we came there with the people from Boegoebaai. So the announcements today and yesterday about the MOU between the provinces, I feel, are very strongly also related to the cooperation between those 2 potentially major hydrogen ports of the future. So it's very interesting. I think I probably used my time, right?
Yeah.
Give the floor to someone else.
Yeah, no, thanks. Don't worry, you're going to come back, you know, with some sort of key detail. Obviously, I mean, I want to agree with you, particularly when you look at the Northern Cape. I mean, they've got a lot of sun. If you look at Western Cape, I mean, in a way, we're blessed with sun, but I mean, we're blessed with a lot of wind. And then obviously, we're also blessed with key infrastructure, like in Saldanha Bay Port. And both provinces are blessed with wonderful people. That's also knowledgeable, but we're also learning in the space. We also learn from those that have traveled before us. I'm now going to ask Carolyn next to me, you know, to make some opening comments and maybe also, you know, share with us what it is that you're doing and more or less what International PtX Hub do and what is it that you can do to contribute what we're discussing here today.
Thank you very much. Yes, very nice meeting you. Carolyn is my name. I think I can put myself in the same boat as you. Small packages, dynamite. I don't say anything more. Yeah, I'm heading the International PtX Hub. We are based in Berlin, and we are also based in Brussels in Belgium because EU policy, of course, is very much important for Germany as well. And then we have 13 partner countries around the world, and South Africa being one of them. So what do we do? The International PtX Hub is an advisory body, one could say, that has the objective to support countries in the world in the build-up of a market, a sustainable PtX market, let's say. In the PtX Hub, we have a focus on transport, on aviation and shipping, namely because we believe, or it is clear that these are the very hard-to-abate sectors that cannot be simply electrified, but that are also very important in terms of economic development. So these are the sectors that we focus on. In South Africa, we are only just starting, I would say. My colleague Alexander, sitting there, is here on the ground. I am based in Berlin. Reach out to him if you want to know more later on. What we want to do here is we would love to, among other things, work on a green shipping corridor with our partner is the DTIC, our main partner, but we also work with many different stakeholders that are involved in this, of course. We see shipping, green shipping corridors as a very big opportunity for different reasons. I might not just talk about that now, but maybe later on. One last remark on what we do, putting it very concretely, what we can do is we support with technical studies, pre-feasibility studies, for example, trainings. We support with policy advisory and things like that. So we are not an investor, we are not a project developer, but we flank projects being in development.
Wonderful. No, thank you for that. I mean, there are many partners in this room. I mean, you're aware of what we want to do in the port of Boegoebaai or Boegoebaai-Seberg. I mean, Kashifa is here from the port of Saldanha. Obviously, you know, it's all part of the northern-southern corridor, and that's what we want to do. Dr. Helge SAGHS, I mean, you from SASL. I mean, a major partner across the world. I mean, you're also partnering with many international institutions. Do you have some comments from your side, and how does it connect to what it is that we want to do?
Thank you, Dr. Harry. A great pleasure and to be here. I'm also blessed being here already the 4th time this year, and I only joined SASL, and it's an easy task to be in South Africa and to introduce SASL. I think everybody knows SASL more or less. And I only joined the company after 20 years in the aviation industry, which is obviously, as Caroline just said, the hardest to abate sector, together with the shipping industry. And having joined SASL to also leverage their 70 years of experience with Fischer-Tropsch technology. So this is now very much back on our cards at SASL strategy. And we are both trying to produce sustainable aviation fuels as a market entry scenario out of South Africa, but at the same time also with an international business that I have the honor to lead, SASL EcoFT, leveraging our Fischer-Tropsch technology to start an international business. And that's why it's a great pleasure to be here. And just, I mean, I think the time is really now, the clock is ticking. Each and every second we speak. So one can say as an analogy, 1 Hiroshima bombs or 5 Hiroshima bombs, that heat that is released during the explosion of 1 nuclear bomb, like of the category of the Hiroshima bomb, is released 5 seconds of 5 bombs per second. So that is more or less 432,000 bombs a day. Yeah? So that is the energy, or that is the heat that we put into the atmosphere per day as humankind, with 8 billion people, just having exceeded that number last week. And we'll be about 10 billion until 2050. And the time to act is really now. And that's why I can also only encourage everybody here in the room, as much as we might be in or might have been in the past, also possibly even competitors, to really encourage a dialogue and a true cooperation, because the clear value to really accelerate those green molecule PtX initiatives is really in collaborating. That will be of essence.
No, thank you, Dr. Helge. Allow me just to come back to Monica. I mean, Monica, you've invited us to the port of Rotterdam. I mean, you've got a long history with the Northern Cape around the Boegoebaai project, including obviously the heads of agreement with the Northern Cape Economic Development Agency. I was quite fortunate to visit them for the first time last week. An amazing institution, people that have got a lot of capacity. In fact, we call it probably about 18 months or so ahead of the Western Cape, and that's why one of the reasons why that agreement have been signed. So the Port of Rotterdam has been involved in a number of green hydrogen development projects, as you've indicated, also across the world. But maybe share with us what attracted you to a place called Boegoebaai-Seberg, and how do you think will that link now to what we want to do in Saldanha? And how does it generally compare to some of the major projects that you involve in the rest of the world? It's quite a loaded question, but I mean, we sit with a little town in Northern Cape, sort of on the west coast, and I mean, what attracted you to this place?
Well, where shall I start? Maybe I should first say we got a friendly nudge to get involved from the people we were talking with at the central state government, the presidency. They said, hey, if you're so interested in hydrogen export, we're looking at this project in Northern Cape. SASL are looking at it. We know SASL. We work with SASL in Rotterdam. and try to understand each other's objectives, see how we can help each other there as well. But the Northern Cape, yeah, there's nothing there in Buga Bay. Yeah? It's like a lot of sand. It's a bit daunting. It's really a greenfield port. Good thing is we've done that once before in Oman, in Sohar. There wasn't anything. It was a greenfield port, and it's now a very successful Middle Eastern port, one of the larger ones and it's perfectly operational. And we've done that because together with it was a 50-50 effort, 50-50 ownership, working together closely, understanding each other and developing, but bringing in our network, bringing in the commercial know-how, our knowledge of chemical clustering. So that's something that we can potentially bring to the table. And around the hydrogen, I forgot to tell when I started, what we're doing in Rotterdam is not just trying to connect with projects, we're also, of course, developing the infrastructure to receive very high volumes of hydrogen, ammonia, LOHCs, green methanol, and also perhaps actually the plan is there, it's been announced, we might have the first liquid hydrogen terminal operational in 2027, run by Shell. We're also developing an electrolyzer cluster, and we're doing a central pipeline for hydrogen to connect all those chemical and refinery companies and the liquid bulk terminals to a central point of access for hydrogen to get it into their processes, to replace all the grey hydrogen they're now using, but also the other fuels and feedstocks we need to replace with hydrogen. So there's two zero-emission solutions, we think. It's battery electric and hydrogen. And that's all derived from that first plan in 2013 when someone said we have to make a plan for hydrogen. So what we hope to be able to do, because we kind of started early, is to be able to accelerate this development in other ports, in other in other locations in the world. Different conditions, so we can never do it alone. It is a matter of connecting and working together. But what attracted me and us to Buga Bay, one more thing about international development, what we've done. We also have a joint venture in Pecém in Brazil. We have two actually. And the one in Brazil, 3 years ago, my colleague Duna and I were sitting down. She was in the Netherlands for a visit, and she was talking about the wind power in the area. And I said, oh, you have a lot of wind power. I have this new job. I'm doing hydrogen connections, and maybe we should talk about that. And the thing is, the beauty of it is, we had the network starting, we had the Portuguese project going on, that was one of the first, the Moroccan project, one of the first, and we were building this network of companies, because all of you are in this network, to do hydrogen. We're all colleagues there. And so we were very fortunate, because we had a plan, a blueprint in Rotterdam, and we could sort of transpose that to Pecém in Brazil. They had lots of space, lots of renewable energy, and a lot of hosting, it's Belgian, a lot of appetite for attracting clients. They had the space, they had the renewable energy, and they had the know-how, because we shared know-how, and they have a good team there as well. But we were able to introduce the first clients, and now they have 20 new clients in their port for producing hydrogen. And the last thing I have to say about it is, last thing, if I may, they intend to produce 1 million tons of hydrogen for export by 2032. That's a lot, but we need a lot more. We need about 20 million tons, and we have a plan to hopefully receive 4 million tons around 2030, so we need all the connections we can get, because production is still very small, green. Huh? What attracted us to Buga Bay then was the friendly nudge. Please go talk there. And I have to say this too, they're not in the room, unfortunately, but I have to say it, the drive, the intelligence, and the sense of fun of the people we work with. So,
wonderful. Sure. That's wonderful. I suppose, Monica, it's actually drive times two, so it's a drive of the individuals, but also just a drive to get to Buga Bay, on those beautiful roads of the Northern Cape. I want to just come back to Toshihiro. I mean, you've made some nice comments, and I want to link it to the comments that was made by Dr. Helga, particularly as it relates to the work, that you're doing with Sasol. And I want to also link it to the point, Monica, that you made around the supply of hydrogen, which is far less than the demand. So looking at the work that you've done, particularly in Japan, and also the work that you've been doing as part of Itosho and with Sasol, what do you think is it that we can do to market ourselves better? Because obviously there's an opportunity. I mean, it is about, the rest of the world knowing that South Africa is on the map. I mean, we're on the map with another country, Namibia. I mean, and if you just look at the economy of just Western Cape, I mean, it far outstrips the economy of Namibia, yet they are far ahead, with some of the initiatives within the green hydrogen space. So what do you think can we do better jointly between the two provinces to market ourselves to investors and partners? And then maybe just talk a little bit about the agreement that you've got with Sasol and whether that extends to PTX for shipping and for aviation.
Okay, thank you. So where can I start? Okay, Japan and South Korea is really far from here, South Africa, and takes 24 hours by airplane and more than 1 month by vessel. So as I said, Japan is not, how can I say, cannot be attracted that, let's say, collaborate with South Africa, Sasol, or invest into South Africa. But I don't think it's not correct. And if you look at the South African government hydrogen strategy, South Korea and Japan is already designated as an important market to export ammonia and hydrogen. That's because we have about 8 to 10 million ton per year demand by 2030. So we have huge demand, starting from the coal ammonia co-firing for the power generation, and also ammonia vessel, which I just touched about, and for other purpose, including fertilizer manufacturing, others. So so we have big demand, and then ammonia or hydrogen will be a commodity in future. In this period, at that moment, the location of the manufacturing place will not be so important. This is what we are thinking. This is just a commodity, and the difference on the freight and distance and time for the logistic could be the very minor point. So I think this is a starting point when I talk about attractiveness of the South Africa. And then, and needless to say, South Africa has, is blessed abundant, renewable, energy resource. So it has advantage already. And then South Africa is, one with, not one, but surely biggest economy, developed country on the African continental. And the reason why we, close the MOU with Sasol is Sasol has technology. Especially for the power to X, for the aviation and the shipping. So, I'm not sure if everybody can agree, especially from the participant from Japan. But South Africa is for sure very attractive place for us to develop and collaborate and invest. Yeah. Even if we look at the Asian market, but as I said, we are not looking at just Asian market. If we look at the international and global market, for sure, as you can see, many participants from European countries, it's very attractive for us. So there is no, how can I say, doubt for us to collaborate and work in South Africa. That could be the answer to your first question. And the second question is, your question is contents in the MOU. Okay. So current MOU more focusing on hydrogen, green hydrogen and ammonia development, and mainly for offtake by Itochu to the global market. But we were very interested in expanding this field to the power to X, including let's say SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. Actually, Itochu is a unique SAF supplier for Japanese airline, for JAL and ANA. This is not with Sasol and not with South Africa, but we tied up with Neste, it's a Finnish company, and then we can distribute their SAF to Japanese market and Japanese airline. So maybe we can have expand our business chance to collaborate with Sasol to be involved in that area. And actually we are having some discussion to do something in future. And for shipping, ammonia could be the one of the key fuel for the green shipping. But of course, methanol, somebody talk about methanol. Methanol could be another, how can I say, important fuel. So, and I know Sasol is involved in such, e-methanol production. That's why it's very interested in. Yeah, that's a answer to your question.
Yeah, wonderful. Obviously, I mean, what's key for us is to understand some of the challenges that lies on the horizon and how to deal with that. So I'm going to, when I deal with sort of the wrapping up of this and maybe give you a last opportunity, maybe in the meantime, just think about what do you think are going to be some of those major challenges and what would be our kind of immediate next steps. But I want to come back to Carolyn and maybe, ask her from her own experience, given, the experience all over the world. What do you think is our potential, particularly in this space? How can we harness it? And then also maybe share with us, have you seen any major success stories? So is it something that we can look forward to as a country? I mean, given the huge investment that needs to go into it, what are some of the key pitfalls? So maybe share with us some of the success stories and what is it that we can learn from it, and also including that, what do you think are some of our big potential areas, particularly as the two regions?
Yes, thank you. So first, in terms of the opportunities, in the PTX hub, we believe that shipping and these green shipping corridors could well be a very big opportunity for the South African market. Everybody talks about exporting hydrogen to Europe or to Asia. There, South Africa might have a disadvantage, also because being farther from the EU, being from the EU. Morocco, other countries might be closer by. That is an economic disadvantage. On the other hand, of course, we also believe it does not really make sense to transport fuel around the world if you can also use it domestically. And this is the case in shipping, where you could use the shipping fuel, the synthetic shipping fuel locally, and the demand is there. We can see that in different ways. On the one hand, the policy, the ambition of the policy is rising. The IMO next year, it is very probable that the targets will be strengthened, and we see more ambitious targets than we see now, the 50% until 2050. In the EU, we have very similar activities. So we have the ETS, the emission trading scheme, where shipping will be included probably next year, early next year. That will have significant cost implications, of course, for conventional fuels. There is different regulation, for example, on conventional fuels, where the subsidies will be reduced. It is expected that this will have a cost impact of roughly 40 euro per ton of fuel. So that also has significant implications, and there is more of this. Also, there are a lot of countries that already have more ambitious goals than the IMO currently has in their strategies. Apart from the regulators, the policy level, of course, also in industry, we see a lot of ambition. Maersk, for example, has announced that they have already bought a couple of zero, well, at least let's say, ready to be zero carbon vessels. And they state that from next year on, they want to only purchase vessels that are ready to run on zero emission fuels. In the same manner, the cargo owners, very big cargo owners like H&M, Amazon, IKEA, and many more have pledged also that by 2030 they only want to ship cargo in a zero emission way. So we can see the demand is there. Especially when you think about exporting goods to Europe, for example, we know South Africa is a big car exporter. when you think about a car, it can roughly be said that the transport cost in general, the transport cost for every 100 cents that you transport, and the value of the good is roughly 8 cents. So if you think about exporting a car, then the green premium, in order to be able to ship it in a zero carbon way, and the car, let's assume it costs 20,000 euro, it would be roughly 1,600 euro additional. So that is not too much, and that is probably a premium, a green premium, that in markets like in Europe or in Japan and other markets, there is the willingness to pay for it. So that is why we see a big opportunity for shipping, for green shipping fuels in South Africa. The second question you asked is on the success stories.
Yeah.
And that best practice success stories. Of course, that is tricky because we are at the very start of this everywhere in the world, not only in South Africa, but everywhere. So nowhere in the world has the red ribbon been cut on a green corridor. And also where the production of PTL is in its infancy. So in Germany, for example, we have a very small pilot plant that produces e-kerosene for jet fuel, but that has 1.25 megawatts of electrolyzer capacity. So this is still very infancy. Yet, still, I think we can say that there have been a lot of already steps that we can learn from and that you can consider success. Talking about green corridors, and Rotterdam is part of that. We have now 22 roughly announced, and at least 4 of them are already in the feasibility state. I think 2 have implementation plans, and if I'm not mistaken, Rotterdam is one of those. So that has come a long way already. I would consider that a success. Talking about the EU policy, for example, or the ambition raising in policy, I would consider that a success too. And talking about the industry initiatives, the same. This is a success too that we can learn from. I think what is very important, and what is very also the opportunity about the shipping sector and these green shipping corridors, is that we can tackle a very complex problem, a worldwide problem, where we have a lot of uncertainty, a lot of risks. We can tackle it at a manageable level. So we have a very concrete route. We have very concrete ship owners. We have cargo owners. We know all these people. We can get them in a room and we can tackle the problem very specifically. So I think this really is the way to go.
Sure. No, Monica, Caroline, thank you very much for that. I mean, I want to connect to what you've just said and maybe ask Helge also to come in. I mean, both Helge, Monica, you as well as Caroline have got extensive experience, particularly within the European market. I mean, our colleague from Tashio indicated that obviously, you know, they've gone with Sasol because you've got the capacity, but I mean, I know you've also have the capability. Even the president spoke about it. You've got the technical capability, you've got the proficiency to deal, you know, with some of the stuff. But obviously, we sit in South Africa, so maybe share with us, what do you think, particularly within the European market, how is South Africa's green hydrogen narrative being received in Germany or more broadly within the European market? So I'm going to ask Dr. Helge maybe to comment on that, and then Monica, if you can maybe also comment on it, given also your extensive experience. And what is it that we can do, I think, just to boost that narrative a bit, so that you know, the international world also believes that we can pull this off and that we can compete in the world. I mean, yesterday there was this concept that was flying around called first to market, you know, and being out there and demonstrate that you can do it. But I mean, how does the world view us?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and let me ask, or let me answer that question to a lesser extent as an employee of a South African headquartered company, Sasol, or to a lesser extent as a German national citizen, but rather as a global citizen. As we all know, climate change is ubiquitous and doesn't have any passport, so we need to act now, as said before. If we look at the mobility sector, so we are currently emitting annually around 60% just the mobility sector, which equals to 8 billion tons, 8 gigatons of CO2 equivalent emissions. So if you want to get rid of this, we need sustainable or renewable fuels. And so because these will be burned for a very long future, not only in ships and in aircraft, in planes, but also in heavy-duty trucks, as much as we still really believe in electric vehicles, but it will take decades and decades to come until we will be able to electrify all these sectors. And we today have around 1.3 billion internal combustion engines on planet Earth. Yeah? The aviation industry flies around 26,000 planes. The shipping industry uses around 55,000 vessels. If we want to get rid of those emissions, we need fuels. So how is that perceived from the European Union, for example? We've brought in place those Refuel EU initiatives around the maritime sector and the aviation sector with so-called blending mandates, which stipulate the uptake of fuels, renewable fuels, until 2025 of 2% and until 2030 of 6%, but even up to 63% in 2050. And for the shipping industry, even 75%. So there are really ambitious goals. Other nations like the United States, which have most recently announced the Inflation Reduction Act, they are even exceeding those targets. And then you're looking at some customers. There are airlines that also fly into South Africa, like DHL, for example, or Lufthansa. They also have announced Air France, KLM, many of those airlines and carriers from the European Union or also the United States have announced blending mandates that they want to adhere to. So I think the appreciation for South Africa to build a renewable fuel business is absolutely there, to combine also the endowment of wind and sun, so renewables, and also the scientific expertise in South Africa. As said, Fischer-Tropsch, the only country, one can say, that has constantly invested in the scientific development of Fischer-Tropsch has been South Africa, although it was invented in Germany and patented. Those patents were filed in 1925, about 100 years ago already, but nonetheless, I think South Africa, together with Sasol, has really mastered building those reactors, and that's why I think a close collaboration between those countries, the European Union and South Africa. And we also, a last comment from my side, we need to make sure, and that's why I'm answering this question also as a global citizen, we need to make sure that we don't face any new imperialistic ambitions. We need those investments. It's been particularly the developed countries in the world, like in Europe, that have polluted the planet Earth within the last 160, 170 years. So we need to unlock massive investments. It will be, we heard it this morning from the Premier of the Western Cape, around $5 trillion per year. So up to 130 trillion until 2050. This money needs to come from the global biggest GDPs, from the United States, from China, from Germany particularly, from France and the UK, and otherwise it's not going to work, and we need those investments in South Africa. And if the United States, the UK, France and Europe have promised and really pledged 8 billion euros to be invested in South Africa during COP26 in Glasgow, and nothing more or less has really been invested since then, not a single euro cent has been invested within a year. I really can only encourage those countries to really take decisions and come to actions.
Cool. Monica, do you have some views on it? I see you chuckling on the side, you know, listening to the good doctor on that side.
I'm just trying to also I was also thinking about something Caroline said earlier about, just because I want to reassure you, South Africa is not too far away, because the sourcing will have to come from many places. There's going to be trade. Ships are going to, like in the oil and gas trade, that's one. And we did a lot of cost modeling on hydrogen shipping, or if I say hydrogen, I also mean ammonia, I also mean methane, I mean all the derivatives. But the actual cost is in the electricity, in the capex of the electrolyzer, and if you ship it, the biggest part of the cost is in getting it on the ship and taking it off the ship again, and maybe cracking it if it's ammonia and you want to take the hydrogen out again. But the distance in between isn't the biggest cost determinant. So we're also looking to source in Australia even, which is really very far away because of that. So and then the other thing, it's not really a competition, because there simply is an extremely high demand and very little supply. So there's good sense in being a first mover, because the price, especially in Northwestern Europe, of energy will be very high. very high. So it's not so much about the cost of hydrogen, but about the price of hydrogen and the availability. So anyone who has a low production cost is very blessed because they can have a high margin. But the competition element will come into play much later because we now have to make sure there's supply at all, there's availability. And I think South Africa is in an extremely good position there because you have very good conditions for renewables, if you talk about Bogbei, but also elsewhere, very good conditions for renewables. The distance is no problem. And you have plans. As was said this morning in the first panel, money is not the problem either because there's many, many investors, also in the Netherlands, also state grants available. All these things are happening. But commercial investors, I mean, why not? Be very careful because free money is in the end very expensive. I think there is a business case. So there will be investors and everybody will benefit. So, but we just have to do it. And we shouldn't wait too long. That's, I think, the main thing.
Yeah, cool. No, thanks for that. I mean, I'm coming to the last sort of comments, but I want Toshihiro to maybe just come in here. And I mean, there's this concept called book and claim. Alternatively, I mean, given the size of our GDP, you know, if we need to go into this space and expand all this funding, particularly from a capital infrastructure and stuff like that, how do we make sure, you know, that we run a viable project? How do we make sure that particularly when you pull investors into the space, you know, that they will be able to do the necessary due diligence before they put in their money, and whatever we do, that it's actually successful. You've heard the President this morning, some of the comments that were made yesterday, particularly by Dr. Professor Ramagopa, the size of the investments that's been sort of committed by Minister De Lille. How do we ensure that, you know, we get value for money, and eventually, if we think about the opportunity, that it's worth it to go into green hydrogen than trying to do something else?
Thank you for giving me very difficult question to reply. So this hydrogen, green ammonia society is a really new society and a new economic system. That's why, as you pointed out, it's very difficult to materialize this kind of investment, even the industry. So one thing we are doing as Itochu is maybe it's better to use the example of this, green shipping industry. So as I said, Itochu is developing the ammonia engine. This is a starting point, but and then aiming to launch a first bulk carrier by 2026. Now we are on that right track, and I believe we can do that. But even we can make and develop ammonia engine and the vessel. If nobody use, this will not be how can I say launched successfully. And then if we cannot secure the economical, reasonable green ammonia, cannot be run, and then if nobody can supply the or refill the fuel into the vessel, vessel cannot be run. That's why what we are doing is more, let's say, integrated scheme. So we are working with every kind of stakeholder in parallel, in the same time, and establish the demand and supply at the same time. And as you said, this is the biggest hurdle and very difficult to achieve this kind of target. But without this kind of activity, I'm sure we can do that. Mm-hmm. But and then one more important point is we Itochu cannot do by ourselves all this kind of activity. That's why we are collaborating with many how can I say partners for finance, MEFG, for shipbuilding, MOL. For the ammonia, SASO, so like this. So involving a lot of stakeholders and the partners, trying to establish the demand and supply in the same time. So yeah, this is what we are doing, and this make a breakthrough of this green ammonia society.
Wonderful. No, thanks for that. I know Monica wanted to come in, but I just want to check, Caroline, did you maybe want to respond to any of those things, or do you've got any new ideas in the space? Because obviously it's also about how do you de-risk some of these major projects where you're potentially only going to see the payoff in a couple of years from now.
Maybe just, thank you, just very briefly commenting on the book and claim, and also on what you said, that of course it's not too far away, and where there is a business case, there is a business case. So I can't argue with that. At the PTX Hub, at the core of our thinking is also sustainability. Mm-hmm. This is about climate change after all. So we think about I think in the end it's a matter of timing. What comes first? What's the first things that we should tackle? For us, that is local demand. And that is why shipping is such an interesting opportunity for us. Of course, there's also a market for hydrogen and exporting hydrogen to Europe and other parts in the world. And you had mentioned it already. If you hadn't, I would have mentioned it now. But of course, there's also something like a mechanism called book and claim. So a virtual trade, let's say. That way we can also ensure that we don't have to ship fuels around the world, but we can use them locally, produce them locally, use them locally, and then claim where we need them, the green certificates, let's say, for these products. That much.
Maybe you want to come in, Doc, and then I'm going to ask Monica for some final comments on it, and then I'm going to give each of you sort of a final parting shot.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think the problem is such a big one, an unprecedented one. And if you just, as I said, look at the mobility sector, so we're speaking about 2.8 billion tons of fuels that have been consumed prior to the pandemic in 2019, yeah? And the aviation industry around 300 million tons, as well as the shipping industry. So if we want to solve that problem, because you mentioned, Caroline, this project in Germany, Emsland Wertle with Atmosphere. When I read the press release, and Lufthansa, I worked 10 years for Lufthansa, and my ex-colleagues were boasting themselves so much about this incredible PTL project in Germany, and I read the unit, and it was 20,000, and I deemed it to be tons, and I thought that's why it's this big press release, but it was 20,000 liters. And if you try to fuel an aircraft, an A350 or an A380, for example, it consumes more than 250 tons. 250 tons. Yeah? So that's why with a maximum takeoff weight of more than 500 tons. And if you want to fuel up 20,000 liters, so the annual production of such a little plant in Germany into one of these aircraft, you just need to fly out of Frankfurt and make an immediate turnaround. Yeah? So that's why industry scale is the key answer, and which is why such projects like Buchobai are certainly the perfect ambition, yeah? And we need to really look at global scaling opportunities. It will need a lot of money, and yes, as you said, Caroline, where's the business case? There's a business case, and we will find them. But we need investment certainty and security, and that's why also the regulatory frameworks in the European Union, for example, they need to be improved with the Delegated Act. It creates a lot of hurdles also to invest here in South Africa, because unless we are able to really sell those green molecules out of South Africa into the European Union, yeah, with all the impediments that we're currently facing with Article 28 of unavoidable CO2 of industrial emitters, or how to ring fence in a Fischer-Tropsch reactor certain biomass, green molecules, beyond the gas to liquids molecules, this is more or less impossible. So we would have to replicate all those industrial assets, and that is then absolutely no business case.
Wonderful. Monica, some final comments from your side?
I have to be careful here.
Yeah.
Now I have to give you a word of reassurance, because I think we're fully aligned here. I don't believe in a country that is only exporting raw materials like the plain basic fuels. There has to be a local, robust basis of industrial development. Around that H2 molecule, you can build green steel. First example here, but we have seen exactly the same in Pesang in Brazil, because there was the local steel factory sort of doing reasonably well, but then now bought by ArcelorMittal to make it a green steel factory. Because why? Because they have a hydrogen production site next door now. So, and this is where you start building clusters of industry, and this is what you need. Because if there's no basic industry, no local offtake, you need both. You really need both. Otherwise, it's a short-term thing. It's not good. And also, I do believe that there has to be a really fair exchange where you like to do business with each other because you both get something out of it. So that's one thing. And maybe I wanted to check, because there's probably, it's an international company in this room, but there's also potentially people who know Afrikaans and Dutch. So I wanted to ask you, do you know the word vliegschaamte? Vliegschaamte. We have a lot of stuff on that in the newspapers. It's about being ashamed of flying because it's bad for schaamte.
Yeah.
Schaamte.
Vliegschaamte.
Vliegschaamte. Okay. So what we really want to do is not be ashamed, but be very proud, because we will have clean aviation fuels. The pipeline we now have to Schiphol Airport directly for kerosene has to be filled with SAFs from Neste, from you. So.
Cool. Wonderful. I think that's really been amazing. And I mean, I want to say thank you. I mean, but before I do that, I want to just give each of you a 1 minute or maybe 30-second sort of last shot at this. And maybe I'll ask the question about, so what do you think are some of our urgent next steps? I mean, the Premier this morning spoke about urgency. I think the doctor there told us, spoke about the whole issue around also urgency, but also certainty, particularly from a financial, political perspective. But what do you think, Doc, are some of our sort of next urgent steps? And what are some of the key timelines?
Yeah, from our point of view, if we forge those corporations, we need to de-risk a certain bunch of technologies, those technologies that will bring us to scale. This is what is very much now one of our key priorities, together with our potential partners and with our existing technology partners. And then we can really demonstrate, once we have demonstrated, we can de-risk the business cases, increase the investment certainty for financiers, and that will certainly help. And a very final last comment from my side, the good thing is to fly with a good conscience and without Flugskam is also possible today without flying on 100% SAF. For example, SASL, that was one of the first initiatives when I joined the company a year ago, together with my colleague Isiena. She is able to help you here in the room if you would like to learn more about it. We are flying net zero today already. All employees within SASL, with the more than 6,000 business trips we do each and every year, it's in our climate report, we are able to fly net zero because we take these high quality carbon offsets that we've secured, and this is already possible today.
Cool. Toshishire, final comments from the Dynamite Man?
Thank you. So we are, a Japanese trading company, and we do investment, all over the world. That's why we need to fly to the, all over the world. That's why we need to care about, such, net zero or logistics. That's why I need to pay more attention on this project. And regarding the urgency, please allow me to make very Japanese style, comments answer. So we don't have any clear answer for this green hydrogen and ammonia society. But a lot of people are trying to achieve and realize that in the society, and then they are developing new technology. So what we want to do is, I don't need to be, how can I say, rushed to do something. I need to verify one by one each technology together with a partner, and then think about what is the most appropriate and the reasonable way to achieve the society. That's my answer.
Thank you very much. Monica, some final comments from you?
Oh, I find this actually a difficult question, because I could go on and on about this. But what I would like to see is to see South Africa on stage in Europe more often, to show your potential, because you have such a lot of potential. I see so many countries on that stage in Europe, the World Hydrogen Summit, everything, the stages like that. Be out there and show the value of what you can do, and because there's a lot to gain from stepping in, and don't hesitate too much, don't discuss too much, Just go, make the first step. Every step is a step. And also show your worth outside, because I think you could be one of the top countries for this. So please don't hesitate. Don't be shy.
Wonderful. Thanks, Monica, for those encouraging words. Karen, the last word is yours.
Yes, in terms of urgent steps or next steps, if it comes to the green shipping corridors, I think what would be needed or very useful is to scan again. A lot has happened already at the ports, especially at the 2 ports we have been talking about this morning, but also scan about the routes that might be eligible for such a corridor. Then get all the stakeholders, cargo owners, shipping companies, the ports, but also the fuel producers in a room, start a stakeholder dialogue and start developing concrete action. And my very last words would be then that the PtX Hub is here and eager to support. So in terms of technical studies, stakeholder dialogues, moderation, things like that, we are happy to support. Reach out to us. We also have a stand downstairs. Yeah.
Wonderful. So allow me then to say thank you to the panel. I mean, you guys have been really amazing, and particularly thanks, Helga, to you, then to Shiro, and then Monica, to you, and then also Caroline. I mean, thank you for your ability, to share information, and I think also thank you for also making yourself available, to help us. And I mean, I'm particularly taken by the comments, Monica, that you made to say that we need to go out there and show the world. Ons moenie skaam wees nie, if you understand that, and show the world that we can do it and get to market first, and also try new things and become a global player. So from our side, thank you very much, and also to the audience, guys, for partaking, listening in, and all of that. I mean, the opportunities here. So from our side, thank you very much. The session is closed.
Just want to do like a school teacher, with the ring, you know. Well, good afternoon, everybody. May I invite you to take a seat? Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the session where we're going to present the Netherlands and discuss the Netherlands and South Africa's relation on green hydrogen. I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to be here because I just love international cooperation. It makes my heart tick as a diplomat. I love it where we can actually see that we have the same goals, we share them. We have different goals, we have different pathways to get there. Some are commercial, some are political, some are bilateral, involving many countries, but the end goal is actually the environment. We need to be there, we need to get there, and how are we going to do it? With the people who can actually make that happen. The Netherlands and South Africa have a very strong economic relationship. We have a strong partnership, historically, politically, but also actually in exports and imports. The Rotterdam harbor is a very important destination, of course, for a lot of goods of Rotterdam. And we are very thrilled to see the developments in green hydrogen on South Africa, to see its ambitions, to see its plans. And we are there to actually help make that happen to the benefit of all of us. I was actually very proud of Monica Swanson. If you haven't met her, make sure to, from the Port of Rotterdam, who is working closely with South African partners, who also says, it's clear the business case is there. We just have to do it now. Let's go, get to work and make it happen. So Monica, thank you for that. It was a good session before this. This is it. I would like to very much invite our moderator, Africa. Please, you will introduce the panel. Thank you for coming here, and there will be time for questions, I think, after this. And we are here. You can recognize us with this, and we have a Dutch stand as well. So if after this you have any questions, we're most happy to meet you and get to know you and answer your questions. Thanks. Africa, to you.
Thank you. A round of applause, please, for Janneke. Thank you very much. For those who don't know me, I'm a broadcaster in one of the regional talk radio stations, Cape Town and Johannesburg. And my job is easy, is to get these 5 incredibly talented and clever people to answer all of your questions. It's quite an intimate room, and if it's okay with you, instead of using the app to post your questions, we're just going to move the microphone around. I think it's going to make it slightly more personal. We're going to try and cover the questions we have in about a half an hour, so that it leaves you with a good 20-25 minutes to pose your questions to the panel. So please welcome my entire panel, and as they come up, I'm going to introduce them. If I can have Mark van der Linden, the Director of Hydrogen Development at NV Nederlandse Genoussie. And Genoussie is a network company for energy that is moving from gas transport company to energy infrastructure. Peter Paul van der Veen, business developer with TNO, and TNO is a not-for-profit research and technology organization. Anne Abedin is a director of Impact Hydrogen, which advises regions, governments, and the private sector on how to build hydrogen valleys. From South Africa, we have Thomas Roos, who is a senior research engineer with the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Oh, wait, you're supposed to go to the other end. Sorry. No. It really doesn't matter. I'll know who you are, and they'll know who you are. And of course, Yudi Mabuza is a senior science and innovation representative with the Department of Science and Technology. The very first question, I suppose, goes to the value chain in green hydrogen that already exists. And we'll start with the Netherlands. Effectively, what are you bringing us? Mark, let's start with you.
Well, I'm Mark. I'm from GasUnie. We are the Dutch infrastructure company. So we own, develop, construct, and operate gas infrastructure, but also heat and CO2 infrastructure. And now we are repurposing our existing gas assets into hydrogen infrastructure pipelines, and we are developing, and in a couple of years we'll build a hydrogen offshore transport system in the Netherlands and also in Germany. So lovely to tell later on where we could meet each other.
For sure. And Anne?
Yes, my name is Anne Appeiden. I'm a director at Impact Hydrogen, and what we do with Impact Hydrogen is setting up hydrogen valleys. We organize it from bottom-up and top-down approach in order to set up a hydrogen valley ecosystem.
Thank you very much. Peter Pan? Sorry.
That's
Peter Paul.
You had to do it. I don't know.
I'm so sorry. It's a character I'm very fond of. In many ways. But tell us about your company and what skill set you're able to bring into the conversation.
Happy to do so, and happy to be here also and discuss this topic of cooperation. I'm Peter Paul van het Veen. Be careful there. And I'm working at TNO, and TNO is a not-for-profit contract research organization in the Netherlands, and those from America, of South Africa. Here, now we go. Then here, so it's the CSIR of the Netherlands. You could think of. So yeah, for reference. Well, what do we bring as TNO in the value chain for hydrogen? So we do quite a lot of contract research. So we have invested a lot in facilities. In the Netherlands, we do electrolyzer development, first generation, second generation, even trying to make the third generation already happening. And I think there's really room for collaboration in that field. And of course, we look closely at the import-export, the trade, and what is underneath there. There's a lot of complexity there, so try to get a grip on that. That's also, I think, a mutual interest to get a grip on that. And,
thank you. You can actually give it to Judy, because that's what the Dutch bring to the game. What does South Africa bring to the game? What skill set, what IP do we have in the space of green hydrogen?
Good afternoon. My name is Judy. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. I'm the Senior Science and Innovation Representative. I am seconded by the Department of Science and Innovation from South Africa, and I'm based in Brussels. So my role is to really promote South African research collaboration within the EU space, but at the same time to market South Africa as a preferred destination for science and innovation. And specifically, we have put hydrogen economy as one of the flagship projects that we want to work with and find partners, mainly because the department has invested a lot of money from 2007 by developing a hydrogen strategy for the country. And that hydrogen strategy was looking at ways in which we could beneficiate the South African minerals, specifically platinum. And we've done so by setting up centers of competence throughout the country. There are actually 3, and we've used a hub and spokes model in which we could put the system, the country in place, and to be ready for this economy when it booms like it is currently booming right now. And one of the ways in which we've done that, we've also tried to position ourselves as a country in international platforms in which we sit in, like the IPHE, which is an international fuel cell and hydrogen and fuel cell and hydrogen economy platform, where we are at the moment. South Africa is it's a global platform in which now they put research topics for the economy. And from there, South Africa is currently going to take over the chairship of the IPHE, and we want to use those platforms in which we can collaborate. And the Dutch is one country that we're very keen to look at areas for collaboration, to which I can talk more into as we get into the session.
And we will get into that. And Thomas, I'm going to use your intro, I suppose, to kickstart